Hello there YouTube, welcome back to the Obi-Thorian Alliance. Tell the people, what are we doing today, Jacob?
We are reviewing Black Adam, DC's newest movie.
So if you want to find out what our thoughts are and what our ratings are, stick around. So, Black Adam, just came out recently. Rock really hyped this movie up. We'll get into it a bit later, whether we thought it lived up to the hype, but let's summarize it first. So, Black Adam, what do we got? It's an origin story, kind of, not really. They kind of skip through how The Rock became Black Adam. It has a few twists and turns in it. Ultimately, it's an ancient society that's 5,000 years old. He acquires powers through the same kind of way Shazam got his powers. He goes on to be in a tomb, essentially, for 5,000 years. He eventually gets reawakened in this new version of the same town, who's now operated by militants that are looking for a crown. The crown ties into the origin story. Black Adam is kind of then, as you said, it's about like a fish out of water kind of story. Yeah. He's angry and wants to try and undo what's kind of happened to his society of where he originally is from, now that there's militants, but he kind of does it at any cost and will kill people along the way. So he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy, but is willing to do bad things. There's a young kid and his mother who kind of gets him out of his tomb, awakens him, and he's kind of loyal to them. They're trying to encourage him to try and free their enslaved town. And then this random crew is kind of established of superheroes that I've never really heard of. Do you want to talk a little bit about this makeshift crew that's going to bring Black Adam to his knees and kind of make him peacefully surrender?
Basically, the justice of society are basically the X-Men, and we get to see them with short backstory, and then their mission is to arrest Black Adam and to bring him to justice peacefully or aggressively.
Yeah, and there's a mix of different superheroes. One, he can make himself really big. They call him the Atom Smasher. There's a character who can control like the wind and make cyclones kind of thing. Pierce Brosnan's character it's similar to a Doctor Strange kind of vibe, but instead of learning magic, he's got this ancient helmet that's from outer space that gives him similar powers to Doctor Strange, and being able to kind of warp reality and multiply himself and kind of, get in people's minds. So he's probably the standout character for me in the show. Without ruining what happens, they've tried and peacefully get Black Adam to surrender, but Black Adam's not really bad. He's just, not giving people proper justice in order to bring freedom to this town. And they go through, and eventually a new villain emerges that they have to team up to defeat. And that's pretty much the movie in a nutshell, without giving away what happens. Anything you want to add to that, Jacob?
I guess as an action film, it's a really fun movie, but if you're expecting like a Shakespeare experience, the story, it basically is, it serves the ball, but it's not the storyline is probably its weakest, or writing is definitely the weakest within this movie, but the action is fun.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move into a verdict. We'll give it ratings. But before we do that, do you think it lived up to what The Rock made it out? It was going to be his biggest role ever and his best movie of all time?
Action, yes, but when it comes to, I guess, no, because I don't think it ever could have.
No, I don't think it's The Rock's best role. So let's get into a verdict. Do you want to give your score first?
Okay, I gave it out of 100% a 72. Like I said, it's a really fun movie to see at the cinemas, a really good action popcorn film that you can just sit down and entertain with your friends. And the action scenes are really entertaining. They do use slow-mo a little bit too much, so if you don't like slow-mo, you might get frustrated with those scenes. The story is its weakest link. They don't explain the superheroes that much. They probably need their own movies. Black Adam himself is okay, but he's actually not my favorite character. It's probably the child and Pierce Brosnan wearing the helmet, and unfortunately the storyline is rushed, and when there's cool moments to breathe within the action scenes, I think the movie's good, but they pump out the action a little bit too much. And I think how they want to get the crown in, even though it's protective, that's basically the only reason why the female is in the movie, even though it would have been better just to not do it, but that's, things happen.
Yeah, so my rating's very similar. I gave it 71%. I don't know if I liked that it got that rating. It seemed a bit more entertaining than that, but then when I look over it, it actually had a lot of plot holes and lacking things that caused it to get that result. So I think 71 may have been quite fair in the end. The Rock was by far not the standout character.
No.
I think him as a hero, he's played that role many times, but as a superhero with superpowers, I don't know if it really suits him. It just very much felt like The Rock playing The Rock. There's nothing special about his performance. There was a couple of comedical scenes in there, using sarcasm, him back and forth with Pierce Brosnan, which was quite good. Pierce Brosnan to me was the standout, and then also really enjoyed the young child. He was quite funny. In essence, the idea of him being enslaved, getting his powers, that wasn't too bad. I didn't mind that. They didn't really spend too much time explaining as to why he was put in a tomb and locked away. They kind of brushed over the storyline with really what happened with him getting his powers. And then the big spoiler in the movie, the big reveal in the movie was actually given away in the trailer, which is quite disappointing. So if you watch the trailer close enough, you already knew what was going to happen, or as you're watching the movie, like, this doesn't add up to what the trailer said. So then when the surprise happened, you go, oh, well, we knew that, they mentioned in the trailer. So that was a bit frustrating. The plot, it had some things in there that didn't need to be. I think the militants were fine. I think Black Adam wanting to get rid of them is fair. I think the Justice Society maybe should have focused more on helping him do that, but in a peaceful manner. Him eventually surrendering was quite easy. Basically, he's just like, yeah, you're right, I am out of control, I'm going to surrender, which is, I don't know, didn't quite add up. And then now that he came back and they kind of brought him back out to fight, he's like, nah, you can't stop me, you're going to need Superman or someone to do it. It kind of conflicted with his original kind of surrender. There's a bit of things that didn't need to be there. Adding a villain, I felt that was kind of for the sake of adding it. I think people have got conditioned to thinking that superhero movies must have a villain, where I think this one could have been just as good if it was, Black Adam's kind of an anti-hero. They kind of persuade him to be on the good side and start to do things by their rules. But, they've always got that problem of him being a bit rogue and doing things the way he wants and trying to control him. That would have been fine. I don't think they had to fight this villain, which was supposedly going to be epic and as powerful as Black Adam, but was disposed of quite easily. They try to add an epic moment with someone sacrificing themselves. Again, I think that's a cheap way of trying to, pull at people's heartstrings by having a sacrifice in a movie. It doesn't have to be there. Sometimes the good people can just purely win and with no fatalities. But overall, entertaining, is probably better than I thought it was going to be, but with a few tweaks and changes, I think it could have been even better again.
I agree with that. If you haven't seen the movie yet, obviously go and watch the movie and then come and watch this video. So I think the most important thing is that with the crown, and do you kind of agree with me with how basically the only reason the female is in the movie is because she wants to hunt down this crown, but it's like it didn't feel relatable, because it's like, I think they should have tied it into her husband passing away, like it was his journey and then she was, Yeah,
maybe so. They try to mention that she already had a piece of this eternium and she had the necklace, so maybe it had something to do with like her grandparents or like being passed down from generation to generation. She felt, tied to finding it, but they didn't really explore that. So that was probably a missing link. They also, every time they showed the flashback of the Rock and his wife in ancient times, it looked like her. Like, I don't know if they're trying to imply that she was in some way her great, 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 great distant relative or something was like the Rock's wife. I don't know if that's where it was getting at, because they kept showing her and it looked like her. She was necessary, but they could have done it a bit differently. It kind of gave that link of that was the group of people that the Rock that Black Adam trusted, and they were the ones that were able to kind of instruct him and get him to do things, and that was probably the only real reason they required her. Otherwise, he could have just came out due to the militants, awakening him and things going wrong. Because I guess ultimately she was the only one that knew how to awaken him, because she knew the scripture and could read the ancient language. So that was kind of her role.
Yeah, and then making a mistake of reading it upside down.
Yeah, so I guess if she didn't do that, the militants would have went in there, got the crown, and then this devil-looking character would have came up, and then there wouldn't have been Black Adam to fight against them. But I think the Justice Society probably could have handled that villain anyway.
Yeah. So I think overall the Justice Society didn't really get much character development, but I guess the reason why that was because it was a Black Adam movie, but we got some cool backstory, but that's the problem.
Yeah, they skipped over them, and they were somewhat mediocre characters. They were an odd choice. They were interesting and were fun, but they didn't have much screen time or any real reason to like them. They were just there, and they weren't very useful in terms of fighting. It was really just Pierce Brosnan and the Hawkman that really did all the heavy lifting.
And do you agree with me with kind of the Pierce Brosnan's character get his own movie?
That'd be interesting to find out how he got the helmet and the powers, but for all we know, the backstory could be quite boring. So I don't know. There might be a reason behind why he hasn't had anything himself. But he was the standout character, I think, and I'd like to know more about his powers.
I don't know if you noticed, but in the first trailer we saw planes instead of helicopters. We never saw Black Adam take out the planes that he took down in the trailer.
Yeah, I do remember in the trailer him flying next to the plane.
We never saw that.
Yeah, I actually didn't take any notice of that. But yeah, you're right. Now I think about it, you see that sometimes at movies. They cut out scenes and change things. So I guess they thought helicopters were cooler. What did you think about the militants? I thought some of their tech was a bit far-fetched.
Yeah, I didn't buy it.
They had these like motorcycles that could fly, and they kind of like warped and skipped through like time, and they were like real fast. I don't know if I buy it. That technology seems a bit advanced for for bad guys, really.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But ultimately, Black Adam was able to dispose of it quite easily.
Were you thinking didn't they get Superman or something? And it's kind of, it happens in quite a lot of superhero movies.
Yeah, I think if you're really worried about Black Adam and how powerful he is, wouldn't you be sending the Justice League? You wouldn't be sending the Justice Society.
Or basically the X-Men.
Yeah. Well, I guess they have that X-Men vibe, but ultimately they don't have any similar powers besides the female that can control the weather. Yeah. She's similar to Storm. But yeah, it kind of had the X-Men vibe because he came out, because Hawkman had this like fancy like I don't know, it was kind of like Professor Xavier's kind of house, but yeah, I don't know if they're meant to be like the X-Men. I think they're just meant to be like a B-grade version of the Justice League, and maybe there's different versions of who's in it in different versions of the comic books, but none of them were convincing enough or cared enough about what they were. They try to make Hawkman to be some powerful leader, but we know nothing about him to really buy that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What would you like to see happen in Black Adam 2?
Is that something they're planning on doing?
I would assume so.
I don't know. Like, I guess we don't want him to be a villain, so I'm guessing him and Superman have some kind of battle, but ultimately they work together to fight some bigger evil. Like, that's all I could imagine, because there's no need to have them two competing and then I guess Shazam comes into it. I think he'll link up with Shazam quite a bit because they have their powers come from the same kind of area, like the same people.
The thing that I don't understand with the movie is why, if the crown was so important, why didn't anyone just destroy it?
Yeah, or I agree. I guess they also didn't understand how it worked and what you could do with it. Only he knew, and that the guy that took over, he basically knew that he had to die in order to harness the power.
Yeah, see the devils.
Yeah, so that's, maybe they weren't fearful of it because no one really understood how to harness the powers except for him. But the villain was unnecessary. I really think it was unnecessary.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Did you buy that Hawkman would have actually listened to her and let her, speak to him like that and give orders to superheroes?
Yeah, they really did kind of bow down to what she had to say, and she was meant to be like the
Savannah?
Yeah, the one that could, unite the two and get them to see their differences. So, yeah, I think that was probably a bit far.
Savannah telling superheroes what to do.
Yeah, she's like, my son needs to be saved. Like, I don't care about what your agendas are or what you guys need to do. My son comes first. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just do that. We'll save your son. Yeah, but I don't know, makes for good TV, doesn't it? A good movie.
I guess so. So I guess Amanda Waller is like the connective character for the DC movies.
Yeah, they do really make her quite important, and she seems to be a reoccurring theme, but I'm yet to establish whether she's good or bad.
I think she just does the hard, what's necessary is necessary.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, she's not evil, but she seems to have, she has strange means to try and get a result.
So how do you think the story could have been better, maybe push this movie to 80%? Because the action is good. It's just the story is feeling movie, so let's not care about the story.
I think it needed to be probably sharpened up a bit in terms of cut out some of the unnecessary story arcs. I think the Crown, I guess the Crown gave them a reason to try and find Black Adam or Black Adam to exist. So maybe that was fine. Or maybe they could have been just searching for Black Adam. Like the militants may have been like, oh, we're going to try and find him because we know he's here. And then he then gets awoken. We could have the same story arc that, his son was actually the true champion. But then his son, sacrificed himself to save his dad. And then his dad kind of let the power get to his head, and he kind of would do bad things to try and protect people at any cost. That's fine. I can get around that. I don't think we needed the Crown then that could have ignored the Crown.
Yeah.
And then we don't have a villain.
Justice Society still come and try and get him to come.
I don't know. I guess maybe it could have been better if, the son and the mother try to say, hey, we need to free our town. Can you please help us? And then he took on the militants. Maybe the militants had their tech and their power, and they because he seemed to have some kind of weakness to Eternium. So maybe they were able to have a decent tussle with him because of that. And then eventually he, takes them down, or he's about to, slaughter a lot of innocent people in trying to do it. And then maybe at the end, maybe the kid kind of convinces him, this isn't what we wanted. We wanted you to, help us, but we didn't need you to do it this way. Maybe we can do it another way. Maybe, he peacefully kind of catches the bad guys and then hands them over to authorities. And then maybe, he's... out of fear of him going berserk and killing a lot of people again, maybe that's when Superman appears and goes, hey, I've been sent here to try and control you. If you get out of control, you got to stay here, and if you step out of line, you have to deal with me. And then he can be like, oh yeah, I'd like to see you try.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if we needed the Justice Society. I think maybe it was just him, realizing that his son wouldn't want him to do it this way. Whether maybe the female, the mother found some kind of scripture that suggested otherwise, that, you weren't the actual real champion, it was your son. and then that made him go, you know, you're right, like I've done the wrong thing. My son wouldn't want this, and then he kind of doesn't slaughter all these militants, and then purely, yeah, as I said, then Superman might come and say, hey mate, I'm here to keep you under control, like don't do anything wrong, and then that could be the and then you know, future movies could be a continuation of what happens there.
Yeah, that sounds like a good story.
Yeah, is there anything you'd add to that, or you'd change?
I don't know. Like the sacrifice, I guess, was needed, but I kind of go. I actually wanted to see Pierce Brosnan more in DC.
Yeah, I guess. Well. Yeah, I agree. If they could have found a way to avoid that, but then in the scenario that I just suggested, I guess we wouldn't have even met Pierce Brosnan's character. It would have been just Black Adam, because it didn't really feel like a Black Adam movie. It was more about the Justice Society.
Yeah.
Well, I think Black Adam, it should have been, you know, him going on a journey and discovering himself and realizing that he's not bad, he's actually good, and then, you know, and then again that kind of warning, you know, like if you step out of line, you have to deal with Superman. And it's very similar to in Batman vs Superman, that idea that they're worried that Superman could step out of line, that they need to have a silver bullet just in case he does.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've always got to keep other heroes in check because their powers could be too strong and they could become villains.
I do have to admit the ending boss fight felt really unsatisfying. We got this build up that, you know, the Devil's Champion was going to be as strong, and it just felt very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I agree. And as rushed as right at the end, it kind of gave you that two endings. I don't really like a false ending. It annoys you when a show or movie does that you kind of prepared yourself that it's done and then they hit you with a bit more. Unless it's something really epic, I feel like it's just an unnecessary add-on.
Yeah. Shall we talk about the ending mid-credit scene?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we get to see Black Adam show up, and then Amanda Waller says, you can only stay in your city or town, and then Black Adam's like, oh, who's going to challenge me? And then Amanda Waller's like, oh, we got friends, we got aliens, we got all sorts of things, and then Superman shows up.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, don't worry, like if you step out, like we will destroy you, like don't worry. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure. And then, who do you think would win out of that fight?
It depends what it depends what circumstances, I guess. If there's kryptonite around, I guess Black Adam. But I guess if there's Black Adam's weakness, I guess Superman. But I would assume Superman.
Yeah, I guess they both seem almost identical in terms of power and strength, so it might just be a battle that never really ends, is it? Like, who is the winner in the end? But I feel like my gut feeling would be that Superman could handle him just based upon experience and what we've seen Superman do in the past.
Well, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let the force be with you. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.